Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining on to the webinar today. A couple of housekeeping points before we start. We're going to try and keep this to 45 minutes. If everyone can keep their microphones muted, then it will make a good audio experience for all. So today's webinar is about the benefits of good positioning. And we have got CEO and physiotherapist Peter Maindal streaming in from Denmark. He's going to go through that with us. He's CEO of LEJRELET, and he's also the inventor and designer of the LEJRELET positioning cushions. So I will hand over to him, and he will take us through the benefits of good positioning.
Thank you, Harvey, and good morning, everyone. I hope you are feeling well. This is my first webinar actually in this form, so if any hiccups happen, I hope you will bear with me. As Harvey said, I'm a physiotherapist, have been working with equipment since 2002, and including that a great deal of positioning work as well with various solutions. I thought maybe some of you would be interested in hearing a bit about the COVID-19 situation in Denmark, as it has roamed around the world so much. In Denmark, of course, we have been affected as everyone else. However, I believe to a fairly limited extent. So we're actually now in a phase 3 of reopening Denmark. Presently, we're only having 6 patients in IC units because of Corona, and only 3 of them are in ventilators. So we are in a fairly good position on that case. In total, we've had today 600 deaths in total. So of course it's not good, but I think also it could have been much worse. And Corona is actually a good link over to talking about positioning again, because those people affected by Corona, especially those who are seriously affected, end up spending a great deal of time in bed. So there we can move on from that. During my presentation, if you have some questions, I suggest you just post them over the chat, and maybe Harvey could mediate them to me, and then we will bring that in as well along the way. First question, when we talk about creating benefits of positioning, I would ask, what is positioning actually? Because we have to agree about what it is we're talking about. And at LEJRELET, we are focused on the bedridden situation and people in bed. So, of course, my presentation will be orientated towards positioning of people in bed. So what is positioning of them? Well, I would answer that question by asking you a question. When you come home tonight, you've had your evening tea, and you settle in and you're going to bed. Do you just go to bed, lie down on your back, put the blanket above it on top of you, and then that's it? And in the morning, 6:30, the alarm clock rings, and you take the blanket away, and you jump up, and you're good to go. Of course you don't. You know that very well. You know that you go to bed, and you start fiddling around a little. You twist over here, and no, that wasn't good, and you do this, and you take your arm here or there or whatever, until you find that position where you feel, this is good. And with this position, you start the process of falling to sleep. It's the same when you look at your children. You take our small kids to bed, and if we observe them, they rotate around the bed, don't they? Even in their sleep. And in the morning, after you fiddled around and you wake up, you're not in the same position as you were initially, are you? You changed position. When you're sitting down, you're also going to change positions, and numerous times while seated. It's a subconscious thing that we do all the time. We change position, even in our sleep. So that would also be a good indication to you. There's probably something good to gain from working with positioning, also with people lying in bed the majority of the time. I would start the process around this by trying to keep it a bit basic, because you can make things extremely advanced and sophisticated. It doesn't necessarily make it more right. And this has been part of the mentality for us at LEJRELET when we started working with positioning, trying to make it accessible and logical. So when we talk about clinical benefits from positioning, I would like to start at one point, which is the base for us when we talk positioning, and that is stability. Creating stability around that person you want to position. Again, considering you guys are probably, to the majority of you, sitting in an office somewhere. You have a comfortable chair, good support under your pelvis and the thighs, probably backrest, maybe even an armrest, and you're sitting there and you feel stable. And you're probably also feeling fairly safe because you're in an environment you have control of, you know what you're doing and where you are, and that means you start being relaxed. And when you relax, what will happen is that your tone in the muscle, the pre-tension in the muscle, will be reduced. And with that, you will also start reducing the tone, you will reduce the arousal, the awareness in your mind, the awakenedness of your mind. So if I'm very boring during my presentation, some of you may start nodding a little because you're sitting in this good situation. We could change that and see what happens differently. So I might ask you, try to stand up. And when you, yes, please try to stand up. And when you stand up, I know this is a webinar, but we can do it anyway. When you stand up, you will feel that now you're not as relaxed as you were before. You have to use more muscle. You have to be more aware of your balance. It's not a problem, really. You feel safe, but you're still standing, but it's not as relaxed. Now try to stand on one leg. And when you stand on one leg, your awareness will all of a sudden be focused on that balance, and you will not be as focused as on me talking. And if you close your eyes at the same time, you will find that your balance is now extremely challenged, and it's difficult to hear what I say. You can open your eyes and you can sit down. But it's just to illustrate what stability actually does to us. Feeling stable gives a totally different situation for us in meeting everything around us. And if we feel unstable, our focus will be moved towards trying to create some sort of stability. It's subconscious, it's automated within us, because we know if we don't have that stability, we will fall, and falling will injure us or something like that. So this is built into us, trying to create stability. And for us as healthy individuals, finding that stability can be more easy because we can easily adjust our body. We also know about the proprioceptors and the whole neurofeedback, feed-forward system going on between our brain and all that. That works beautifully. But what about those patients where we don't know how this process works? People who have neurological conditions. That could be people suffering from dementia. We don't really know what their perception is. It could be sclerosis. It could be ALS. It could be people who've had a stroke. There can be so many conditions around this that affects our neurological perception. So while I may think that when I'm lying on my back in a bed, I may be feeling stable and safe, that may not be the case for my client who is suffering from ALS, or a person suffering from dementia, because they have a different perception. They may also not understand the condition, the situation, then feel anxious and they move around. So that whole package about creating stability is fundamental. Now, when we created the stability, we created that sense of safety, which created a sense of relaxation, which will reduce tone, which will reduce arousal. And that is, of course, all the prerequisites to creating good sleep. And creating good sleep is actually essential, because with sleep, our whole metabolic circle works full power. That means that's when we are reboosting, revitalizing our whole system. The brain is getting washed. We get all our proteins, our carbs, our vitamins, minerals, etc., spread out into the body. That's the whole digestion, the metabolic cycle that is running full time there. And that works best during our sleep. And with that being spread out efficiently in our body, of course, our body gets the ingredients it needs to start healing if we have conditions that need healing. That could be wounds. It could be all sorts of conditions. But we will start healing. We will start revitalizing the body for the next day activity. And you all know that. When you had really good sleep, you feel fit for fight. If you had an awful sleep, it's really a hard day the following day, isn't it? So that part about having all this run through gives us, at the end of the day, the next day, zest for life, new vitality, and a positive belief that things can actually move in the right direction. And these are some of the basics you can achieve with positioning. Now, positioning can be used in so many different things. Many people consider positioning only to be used for tissue integrity purposes, to avoid pressure ulcers. Yes, that is one thing, but there are so many other things. It can be from an occupational health and safety point of view, where you want to create a stable position in a high lateral position during, for instance, hygiene in the intimate area. It can be while clothing persons. It can be while doing other caring procedures. It can be during sleep. It can be because of a palliative reason where you want to position a limb, an arm, an extremity in some sort of specific position where the patient has less pain. It can be for respiratory purposes where we can facilitate the abdominal respiration by working with a good positioning, high lateral position. So there are so many areas, and I could continue with other areas around this. Could also be positioning for safety, for instance, for people suffering from dementia. So positioning has an enormous area, and it's not only tissue integrity. Of course, tissue integrity is also one, but it's much more. However, one of the fundamentals with all of this, in my opinion, is that we have to create that stability. And that means we have to be able to build positions. And that means we need material that will help us creating that position we want to build with that client. Isn't that correct? Many of you have probably tried to work in situations where you took a towel, rolled it to put in to support somehow. Maybe you had a pack of diapers you brought in. Maybe you used various pillows that you folded, packed, and tried to put in to create some sort of support position. And of course, this is what we do when we don't have other tools available, and then we try to compensate and try to think creatively. And I think that's a very positive quality. But that's not the same as saying this is what is correct nor adequate in the situation. We need, of course, cushions that are designed for purpose. And designed for purpose in that context for me is that cushions that can offer that stability so that you can build a position and the cushion will be in that position and it will offer that position. The cushion will stay in the same shape while in situ. During my career, I've met a lot of various systems around this and worked with various systems. Some were extremely soft. Some were very hard. Remember the packs we had in the older days as physios, these very firm, hard things that were not comfortable in any way whatsoever. There are various different systems. There are sleep systems that have retainers around them. There are many solutions around it. One of the things that I found is that many solutions, they have a very large scale of cushions. And that, in my opinion, is counterproductory. Because if you have a large scale of cushions, then it will be more a matter of which cushion should I choose, rather than a talk about what is it I'm supposed to do with John here. So trying to limit the amount of cushions to a very limited amount of cushions, but that have versatility and that are fit for purpose, meaning that they are part of creating that stability you want to create, that they are breathable, that they're easy to clean, that they offer stability, that they also offer pressure relief. That would be very good, wouldn't it? So instead of having, say, situations where you go in one room, and in one room with John, you will be using those 4 cushions. And then we go into Sarah in the other room, and we'll be using these 3 cushions, and we will be going into Nick in that room, and we will be using 1 of those and 2 of those from Sarah. And if we go into Vinny, it will be 2 different cushions again. This makes the implementation extremely difficult because naturally it will be difficult to understand for carers and remember what you do in each situation. How about if we change that and we said we work with a very limited amount of cushions, but cushions are flexible in use. So 1 cushion will be used for several purposes. that will create the situation you actually have today where you're using your towels or your pillows or whatever, because you start being creative around them to do things, but they're not made for purpose. So if you have a cushion that you can use for many things, it may be that you initially were introduced to that cushion to support the front of the body in a high lateral position. But then you start thinking, hey, if I could do that, maybe I could use it underneath the knee as well. Or maybe I could use it behind the back in that angle as well. And then you start thinking creatively. And the more creatively you think, the more solution-orientated you become towards the needs of John and how you adapt your cushion to that. Just as you do today with towels, davits, the various packs you have of things. So that means all of a sudden we have a situation where we can work effectively, creating that stability, creating a position that's needed in that situation. And the position needed in that situation, that leads me to another myth, in my opinion. There is that tend to say, what is the correct position for John? Well, I would argue there is no specific correct position for John, because normally we will change our position many times. So the correct position for John will be depending on what is the purpose of the position. What is it we try to achieve? I would probably have one way of positioning John if it is a matter of an occupational health and safety situation during a personal hygiene. I want to position him in a specific way so I have access easily and create stability around him. Well, then I would do one thing. If it was a matter of doing something for tissue integrity, there is an area I want totally offloaded, I could do another thing. If it is a matter of John having been in the wheelchair, wheeled down to the therapist, they had a student from uni who was so motivated and they took John through the whole range, and an hour later John comes back and he is exhausted and he just needs to relax a little. Well, that could be another case again of how I position John. My point is, it's very difficult to make a textbook measurement saying John should be like this. But what I can say is John should always be placed in a position where we start out with giving him that stability, that sense of safety, which will cause him to relax, etc., etc. And then I will adapt that way of thinking to the specific situation I'm in. What do I need to do? And I'm sure you can understand, if this is my way of looking into it, I want cushions that are easy to use, that I don't have to focus so much on the cushion, but more on the shape of the cushion in that specific situation, and then how to adapt it to that, because then it's not a specialist situation around finding right material, because I have the material available. It's about adapting that directly into John's situation. And that's what I created with my cushions. I made simple solutions instead that are flexible and versatile in use, that can be combined in different ways, that observe tissue integrity. There was a big study done in Germany, in Berlin, at an institute called ZBI by Professor Krusman. You can read about it on our website if you're interested. But they did a 7-week-long clinical evaluation of it for the German market, and they came out with an evaluation, said it's the most easiest solution that they've had with the most effect. So the idea, the philosophy works. Try to uncomplex it and make it accessible. Make it straightforward for your carers to choose a cushion. Make it available so they can take it, and then start working with the principles. Later in the webinar, one of my good friends from Felgains will be showing you a few tips and tricks about the cushions and what can happen there. But it's this whole thinking that we want to give stability, safety, relaxation, and then move on from that. And then the understanding that one size doesn't fit all, meaning one position doesn't fit all. There are principles about the positions that adapt for anybody, but of course there will always be that variation that we have to adjust this position we used with John. We can implement it with Mary, but we have to do adjustments to that so it fits her correctly. It's not rocket science. Of course, we can come into situations where more clinical background is needed because of specific clinical situations. And that's where we as physios or OTs or nurses, we come in with our more advanced approach, you could say, or a more holistic approach to the body as such, which we cannot necessarily expect all carers to have, not the same understanding because of the different education. But everybody, we can support everybody by giving these basic understandings of anatomy, physiology, and neurology. Basic understanding of anatomy, saying that a joint can be placed in a tense position or a more relaxed position. We have the neutral position of all joints, as you know. So what is that and how to achieve that without mentioning the specific angles, but saying, well, achieve this. For instance, what is the neutral position of the hand? Well, this, the way you hold it. When you just relax your hands and you have them down by the side, that will be the neutral position of your fingers because they automatically fall into that. And so we can move on from various ways there. Working with neutral positions the best you can, working with the stability, and working with that sense of safety and comfort, relaxation around the client. You may say then, but many of my clients and many of the neurological clients you're talking about, they're unable to say how they feel. True, but we can all read body language to some extent anyway. We can see if their eyes are like exaggeration, of course, but if we try to observe them, if we talk with the carers who know the client, they know what they look like when they're happy, when they feel good. They also know what they look like when they don't. So yes, they do communicate. We just have to learn how they communicate and be able to observe what happens. And that way we can implement it there as well. So the whole background is working from a simple perspective of creating stability, working from an understanding that each situation has to have its own solution to create the best result, and work with material that is fit for purpose and that is flexible and versatile, because that gives you that sense of knowledge and comfort with the tool, which means you will be using the tool more and more and for more different situations, which will lead to your professional creativity, which at the end of the day is to the benefit of your clients. So this is what we try to achieve with the way we approach positioning. I hope that understands or explains some of our thoughts around it. And if you have questions, I shall gladly try to elaborate on some of those areas. Harvey, do you have any comments?
That's fantastic, Peter. Thank you very much for that. If anyone's got any questions for Peter in terms of positioning, please pop them in the chat box and we'll get those answered. I'm going to move on to doing some actual demonstrations of positions using the LEJRELET cushions. So we'll come on to that next. But first of all, if we could have any questions around the philosophy that Peter's just gone through. I have a question, if that's right, Peter. How do we facilitate somebody that's got contractures?
Good question. I think it's important that we try to say that working with positioning during sleep is not a situation where we try to work therapeutically towards contraction, meaning that, let's say that I have contractions in my arm to this extent, and maybe I'm able to have it flexed out here. That's the max flex. Well, then I would never try to place my patient like this for sleep with the maximum extension of my elbow, because that is too uncomfortable. I would try to find a medium point where the patient has some relaxation, and then my point will be to try to prevent further flexion so that he does not move further in to that deformation process. Because trying to improve the mobile range of the joint and to work against the contraction, I think that's a therapeutic initiative, and that's a therapeutic activity which requires a therapeutic awareness of what's going on. So I will not try to increase that mobility range during sleep, but I will try to prevent it from getting worse, meaning that I will stop him from going into a more flexion mode, if that's the case, which it often is when we talk this, then I would try to prevent them from going into a full flexion, but try to minimize that range, putting something in between. It could be spastic, for instance, people who are suffering from spasticity. You all know this is very, very powerful, and it's something we can't prevent. And for the people suffering from spasticity, it's actually very painful. So I will not try to stop the arm from moving if it had a spastic attack. I would probably allow it to move it a little, but I would offer that resistance. I want to try to prevent it from going all the way around the back, but just offering some moving in it, because that will take some of the pain away, with the chance that the patient will stay in the same position even during a spastic attack. So not curing it in sleep, that is a deliberate therapeutic intervention. And in sleep, in rest, I would try to avoid further deformation. I hope that understands my thinking.
That's very good. Very interesting, Peter. I don't think we've got any more questions coming through, so maybe we can move into some positions on the bed. So my colleague Sam is going to jump on the bed for me, and we're going to go through some positions. So just to very quickly talk about Peter's LEJRELET cushions. So here we've got two of them. One is the wedge, and this is what we call the pad high. They have got viscoelastic foam in, so they're nice and soft, giving us pressure relief. And they are also coated in this material, which is it prevents fluid ingress, but it's also vapor permeable, so it's nice and breathable, very comfortable for the service user. So what I'm going to try and achieve with these two cushions is a comfortable, stable sideline position for Sam. For example, doing personal care, particularly single-handedly. So I'm going to use the LEJRELET turning system to place him into that sideline position, just for manual handling purposes. So I'm going to put the pad high there, which is going to take his leg as he rolls over. So raise this side bar. And in order to get the turn properly, I'm going to put this arm across Sam's body and make sure this one is away from his body, so his rib cage isn't going to trap his elbow. And I've just shifted his top leg over onto the pad high. And the way Peter's designed this is so that it's half the width of an adult pelvis. So that the hip position here is very neutral. And it's supporting the whole weight of his upper leg. It's obviously got your viscoelastic foam in there, so it's pressure relieving. What I'm also going to do is place the wedge in behind it. So if I move him across the bed using the LEJRELET bit, slacken the sheet off, then I can rotate his shoulders forward and slip the wedge in behind him. And you'll notice the base is quite thin there, but it offers a huge amount of support because it's gripping to the cotton there. So if I lower this side rail down, Sam is now in a very stable position. So if you try and roll back into that, Sam, push into it, it allows that a certain amount of movement, but it's still very, very supportive. It's still in that stable sideline position. So if I'm doing, if this is a single carer situation and I'm trying to do personal care, even if there is some involuntary movement or some stability issues, that's going to keep him very safe, comfortable here from the neutral hip position perspective, and I've got all the access I need for any personal care procedures. So, as Peter was saying earlier, these can be used in numerous different iterations. Another one we can do with these same two cushions, we get Sam to move back into a position like that. We can put these two cushions together like that, go underneath the thighs, like so. Just to, if we need to raise the legs for any particular reason, that's again very supportive. Then let's talk about if we remove these nuts out. We can also, one of the other cushions here is what we call the tube. It's 2.5 meters long and it's full of shredded viscoelastic foam. The benefit of it being shredded is that you can shape it, you can move the foam around inside, so you can create hollows or bulk up certain areas depending on the position you're trying to achieve. So again, for a comfortable sideline position, if I replace this pillow here with the tube, so put that on Sam's head, and over his arm here, bring down his body. Go back into a sideline position. So lift this side rail. And what we can do is ask Sam to, or encourage Sam to kind of cuddle into it, if you like. What we found with service users with dementia or some sort of cognitive awareness, cognitive issues, and maybe some anxiety issues, straight away once they cuddle into this, it gives them such a sense of security and comfort there. And if we want to adjust it, we can just hollow out a bit of the foam there to adjust the position. A lot of times when you use this for somebody with anxiety issues, you can see their tone lowering. As soon as you get them into this position, they relax into it. And as Peter went through, reduced tone, reduced arousal. And they often when we're doing assessments for this, you can see the service user starting to fall asleep. So that's one of the ways we can use the tube. Another popular one is for somebody that's had a dense stroke and they're sliding over to one side. So if I go back to a supine position, and I'll move this around. We go under the arms this time rather than over. Make sure it's not underneath his shoulders. So we've got plenty of slack in the then we can then profile the bed. So we've got nice support for his arms there, and if he's got contractures in his hand, it's going to prevent that if he can grip onto that somehow. And with the full support going all around him, it's very, very difficult to slump over to one side if there's a sided weakness there. And if somebody wants to sit up in bed, watch TV, eat their meal, or whatever, that's a very comfortable, very stable position. If somebody's got involuntary movement or a sided weakness, that's a very, very supportive way. What we're always trying to achieve is, as Peter has gone through, is stable and comfortable positioning. So these aren't necessarily the correct position. It's a case of using these cushions to achieve what is comfortable for the person that you're dealing with. If it needs to go the other way around, if they're tending to migrate down the bed. We can start the tube from this end, go down underneath the thighs and back up the other side. You'll achieve the same thing, but it will stop them sliding down the bed. There's so many ways that these can be used. It's a case of looking at your patient, deciding what's best for them, and being creative in using these different cushions to create the most comfortable, most stable position. Have we covered it, Peter, or are there any questions coming through on the chat? Looks like one here. One of the biggest challenges for us is with dementia clients who always adopt a fetal position, and whether or not they have developed fixed contractures and they resist a form of passive movement.
That's a very good question, and you are so right, Francis. That is a big issue, dementia. For that specific situation where we talk about people going to that fetus situation, I use our tube, the tube 125. I'll just see if I have it here next to me. Hang on. So, yeah, Harvey has it as well, and I have it right here. So it's made exactly the same way as the tube 250 that Harvey used before on Sam. And I actually work with this again. I try to fold it somewhere around the middle, like this. When you have the patient, I'll see if I can move a little away from the camera. I hope you can hear me. You have the patients going down in this position like this. So what you want to do is you want to try to get this in front of them, and then you want them to try to make them hug the cushion. And then when they start flexing in here in that fetus position, they will feel the resistance, and that will stop them from taking the knees up behind their ears because they have something here in front of them. I do know that many times if we facilitate the front, we also facilitate a flexion. Yes. At the same time, however, we are also giving them a lot of tactile stimuli, which gives them a totally different understanding of their own body, that they get a totally different sensory feedback, which gives them a different calmness. That's one thing. And the other thing is they get that as if they are hugging someone. So there is also coming that effect into it. But I'm stopping them from coming up into that very, very flexed pattern and actually doing it a very comfortable way for them at the same time. And the jolly positive side about it is people that we get up lying like this actually in a fetus position becomes very easy to reposition because they will be holding on like this. They're rigid in their movement, aren't they? So when I hold them on like this, I can easily flip them from side to side because they will be keeping the cushion all along. And that means it will be easier to turn them from one lateral side position to another. I hope you understand, and maybe this makes a bit of sense to you, Francis, in this context. I don't know.
Thank you. Yes, it's one of our biggest issues, but it's easy sometimes to address, but it's what you have to walk away from once you've done the training with the carers, and you have to make it as simple as possible because you know that the carers will change. They won't necessarily pass it on. We take photographs, we leave them. So the simpler, the better, obviously, because if it's a struggle for us, it's even more of a struggle for them.
I absolutely agree, Francis. And this is that whole idea I have about trying to let's uncomplex, make things less complex and more accessible, and give them a sense that they can actually do something. And the procedure I just showed you is, in my opinion, it's not very sophisticated. It will many times be able to be done when they are lifted up to bed, because many of these clients are lifted by lift. And then as you are lifting them up into the bed, you can actually already then start implementing the tube 125 and placing that on top of them, because already then they'll have a more tactile stimuli and thereby a different starting position as from when they were just brought in bed without anything in front of them.
That isn't part of the assessment pack, is it, that shorter one?
It's part of, it's like either the 225 or the 125.
Okay.
We can get it.
Okay, thank you very much. That was very useful.
Okay. There was a question about waterproof. And I want just to address that briefly as well. Yes, they are waterproof in the sense that if you spill water on them or anything like that, urine, etc., it won't just go into the cushion. But it's not water damp proof. And my point is, if we want a material that has high permeability because of the tissue integrity point of view, that we want moisture from the body to be able to, in the sense of sweat, that we won't build up that heat, it has to have that permeability. But that also means that if you are using it in a damp bathroom situation, for instance, there is a chance that there will go moisture, water damp, through that into the foam. Worst case scenario, and that is that maybe the longevity of the cushion, the lifeline, will be reduced some. So maybe it won't last many years. Maybe it would only be lasting a couple of years because of the foam being affected by the water. It might be. But I will not say to you that this can be used in any bathroom situation and all water will just stay outside of it, because it won't. There will be water vapor going through it. I hope that explains everything as well.
That's good. On this one about the leg contractors, Peter, if you explain the theory of it, I can perhaps, if you guide me through, I can perhaps show how it works on Sam.
Not a problem at all. So you take the 125, the 125. And Sam, you will be lying with the bended knees and flexed hips. And the arms will be in front of you, up on top of your chest, like you're having your arms contracted as well.
Yeah.
That would be the condition where you're on the way. So what you're doing, Harvey, is as you have the cushion now, the tube 125, you place it on top of his tummy with close down to the legs, exactly. Then you try to guide Sam's arms around the cushion so that he will grab them. And as he has it now, Sam, if you're trying to flex over your hips now, try to move your knees up towards your belly. I'm sure you can see that the cushion is offering some resistance to that. So as Sam is placed in a sideline position, so Harvey, if you elevate the red bar over there now and then turn Sam so he faces us, Harvey will turn Sam around now. The nice thing is that Sam's arm is up. That means that the shoulder is automatically protracted, so we don't have to worry too much about the shoulder blade.
So he's back in his original position, and I'm going to roll him onto his left-hand side. Is that right, Peter?
That's absolutely correct. What you will see is Sam is actually lying now with a lot of stuff in front of him, giving him that tactile stimuli, and it will stop his knees from going up behind his ears. And that way we have good control. It is a fairly simple procedure to implement.
Good. Okay. So hopefully you can see what Peter's just explained. The other part to this is the pressure of the heels on the buttocks. Can you guide us through that as well, Peter?
Oh yeah, that would be an obvious solution as well. Looking at that, if he is also flexing so much with the knees that the heels are going up against the buttocks. Exactly, Harvey. That could be one of the solutions, taking the pad low, fold it once, and then put it underneath the heels so that you have that between the heel and the buttocks, like that. So you have a stop there. Another solution can be, if he has the knees a little more open, that they're not totally flexed, is you put the pad low folded even further up against the knee, actually, from the end. Yeah. So that you stop it up there if that becomes the case. So you just take that folding, that cushion and fold it. The pad low, which Harvey just used here, is that it's 50 centimeters long, 30 centimeters wide, and 4 centimeters high, all viscoelastic foam. And that's made to be folded, rolled, bent, whatever, to create that shape you want for that specific situation. So folding it like that is a perfect situation of handling that as well.
This is the pad low here. So I've just folded it in half and put it behind Sam's knees and tucked it up as high as I can go. And now his heels aren't able to get back and put pressure on his buttocks. Hope that at least clarifies that.
One question about demonstrating seated position with the tube 250. We could easily do that. We could do what you call a semi-Fowler, and you get it with great comfort.
So do you want to guide me through this, Peter?
Well, yeah, we can do that. But what you want to do is you want to get the tube in the middle of the tube. Sam should be on his back, of course. And then you want to get the tube 250 in the middle, underneath his thighs, up against the pelvis when he's lying on the back, and then up along the side of his body, his thorax, so that you support him there. So, yeah, underneath the legs.
Lift your legs up, Sam.
Yeah.
Hopefully everybody can see this.
Then you try to tug it a little in underneath. Lift his arm up a little, yeah, and tug it in on both sides. If Sam, for instance, was hemiplegic, the side where he is hemiplegic, it tends to fall out towards. Of course, I would build the support a bit more with the cushion in that side. Having done this, what you want to do is you release some of the sheet, and then you just elevate the backrest and lower the foot end.
Thanks, Peter. So you can see the way we've placed this cushion here. If we want to bulk up the cushion a bit more, we can move some of the foam just by shifting it up. We can rotate it into his body, and that tucks it in nice and tight. Then, as long as we've got plenty of slack on the Venlet sheet, we can then profile the bed. Like so. And that's tacked nice and close into him so he can't slip over from side to side.
Exactly. And if possible, you lower the foot end as well, then you take off the pressure off the heels and they have a beautiful situation.
Very good. There we go.
You see? Yep.
Right. I think we're done for time now. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Keep an eye out for future webinars. We've got Fools Forums coming up. We've got ones on care for bariatric clients, many things coming up. So keep an eye out for that. Thank you very much for joining, and we'll see you again next week. Thank you very much to Peter for coming on.